Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Pujianto Abid Fadhlurrohman, alongside with my groupmate Arrahman Khalifa and Jatisatrio alghifari. We will explaining about the economic development in Malaysia, challenges, policies, and lessons learned. And now I'm going to explain about the introduction of Malaysia's economic development. So Malaysia's economy has effectively diversified from agriculture and commodity based to one that now includes a robust industrial and service sector, preparing the country to become an exporter of electrical equipment, spare parts, and components since its independence in 1957. So the agriculture in Malaysia makes up 12% of the country's GDP. So the Malaysia's economy has been on an upward track since the Asian financial crisis in 1997. So, and it is predicted that the transition from an upper middle income to a high income economy by 2024.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Jatisatrio alghifari, and now I'll explain about the challenge on the Malaysia's economic development. So going up into the first one, which is there is an inclusive growth or sustainable development is delayed by the lack of innovations in the economy, meaning that because in Malaysia, which practiced by a federal legal systems, whereby the federal government is responsible for planning economic and social development policies. In terms of attracting the private investment and as an important ingredient for the economic growth, certain states are able to better attract the investment due to the partly of the legacy from the colonialism that resulting in the regional disparity among the states of Malaysia, which is in terms of the economic and also the social development. According to data, it is clearly seen that there is shows an economic inequality between the states of the Malaysia in 2016, which according to the states like Kuala Lumpur has an average household income by 12,000 ringgit, which is 3 times higher by the poor state, which is Kelantan, that just giving 4,000 ringgit. So going up into the second one, which is the potential of the gap of the income inequality keep widening in the future, meaning that according to some researchers, Malaysia registered income inequality between the ethnicity that are Bumiputra, Chinese, India, and others due to different economic sector each ethnic most participate in. Referring to the data, clearly shows that the income gap between the Chinese and the other ethnic has been widening since 2019. In 2019, the income gap between the Chinese and Bumiputra is 1,400, and this has increased to 2,743 in 2020. According to the researchers from Khazanah Research Institute, the income gap between the top 20% of the income earners with the other income groups has doubled in 2 decades. Going up into the last one, which is the third one, and since that the human capital mainly in terms of the capital flight cannot dramatically reduce the income inequality, meaning that because improve the human capital through the lower inequality in education has been identified as one of the approach to achieve inclusive growth by reducing the income inequality and also the poverty levels. Lower inequality in education can be seen through the better education attainment throughout the cross sections of the society, which increase in the public spending on education could achieve that goal. A study by Mahmoud, Noor, and Low has also found that developing countries, by increasing the numbers of years in school, could reduce the human capital inequality and also as a result of a gap in income between class in society will be smaller. So I think that's all.
So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will continue with the part of policies applied to tackle challenges. So, the first major economical project ever since Malaysia was independence was the new economic policy, which focused on poverty reduction and social restructuring has transformed Malaysia since 1971. During the late 1980s, rousing deliberations on the successor to the NEP settled on a growth-oriented strategy that basically retained the NEP framework and extended ethnicity-driven compromises. Since 2010, Nations of Reform and Alternatives of the NEP's affirmative action program have been propagated, which, despite bold proclamations, again amount to partial and selective change. While everyone readily agrees that the NEP fundamentally transformed Malaysia, advocates assert that the NEP has achieved tremendous success but remain an unfinished business. Detractors vouch that the NEP largely failed and has overstayed beyond its expiry date. The NEP judiciously distinguished its core objectives of eradicating poverty and social restructuring. The literature generally upholds the NEP's noble goal of national unity, judicious two-pronged framework, and assurance of two minority groups, but also tends to limit the analysis to these rudiments, omitting policy specifics. The NEP declared national unity as its overarching goal and established its two-pronged core objectives of poverty eradication, irrespective of race, and accelerating social restructuring in order to reduce and eventually eliminate the identification of race with economic function. Widespread poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment, and disparities between race groups were identified as major threats to socioeconomic stability. The two prongs have recycled in the collective consciousness of half a century. A combination of over-familiarity and ethnocentric recitation have perhaps eroded appreciation for the judicious distinction. The NAP affirmed, albeit implicitly, a basic and noble principle that the poor and vulnerable of all groups deserve to be assisted on the basis of equality and dignity. Ethnic identity has no part in the provision of basic needs and in helping all Malaysians attain a minimal standard of living. Racial disparities feature as the problem addressed in the second prong, which is the identification of race with economic function. The NNP emphasized that two prongs are interdependent and mutually reinforcing, nothing that they operate in tandem rather than as replacement. The first will focus on raising productivity, structural change, infrastructure, utilities, education, and social services. The second encompassed modernization of rural economies and rapid and balanced growth of urban activities, education and training, and above all ensure the creation of a Malay commercial and industrial community in all categories and at all levels of operation. The NAP grasps that the first and second prongs pursue distinct objectives which call for distinct policy instruments. In other words, the objective of the second prong cannot be achieved by using the instrument of the first prong. The second major project that intervene also the economical situation of Malaysia, which is the Vision 2020. The vision calls for the nation to achieve a self-sufficient industrialized nation by the year of 2020. This idea was proposed by Tun Mahathir at 1991. One of the main goals of this idea is to create economic prosperity. The process of the regulation is one of um, the mission inside this vision. There can be no doubt that regulations are an essential part of the government of society, of which the economy is a part. A state without laws and regulations is a third flirting with anarchy. Without order, there can be a little business and no development. No development? What is not required is overregulation, although it may not be easy to decide when the government is overregulating. It will be guided by the knowledge that the freeing of enterprise to can contribute to the achievement of the wider social objectives. The move by Bank Negara to deregulate the BLR regime is an example in point. Privatization will continue to be an important cornerstone of the national development and national efficiency strategy. This policy is not founded on ideological belief. It is aimed specifically at enhancing competitiveness, efficiency, and productivity in the economy, at reducing the administrative and financial burdens on the government, and at expediting the attainment of national distributional goals. In implementing the privatization policy, the government is fully aware of the need to protect public interests to ensure that the poor are provided access to essential services, to guarantee that quality services are provided at minimum cost, to avoid unproductive monopolistic practices, and to ensure the welfare of the workers.
So, what lesson can we learn after we learning about the policies that has been made by the policymakers and then the challenges of the Malaysia in the future? The lesson that can be learned is the first one is the policymakers need to mitigate the impact of commodity price shocks and volatility on economic growth, financial resources, and income distribution, especially on the poverty level. And if the gap of the income inequality keep widening, there is a possibility of political dissatisfaction among the lower income groups or less developed states, which could become political issues that need to be addressed. And lastly, in conclusion, referring to the four economic policies which are to create stable markets, balance economic prosperity, effective business and development, and protecting employment, we could learn that Malaysia has had numbers of challenges since the country has established. Well-planned policies have played a major role to fight against the challenges. Fulfilling the initial objective are easier said than done, but the effort that have been done by the government and parties involved deserve big appreciation. Maybe that's all from us, and we're sorry for any inconvenience. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.